Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for another edition of the NSCAC Presents Behind the Bench. Today we have a special guest with us, Matt Greenwood, from the director of the Pickering Football Club, and he's also the director of Soccerability Canada. Matt, good afternoon, and welcome to the Behind the Bench that we present on a weekly basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate the time to chat and speak with your membership, and hopefully share some new ideas or some insights into accessible soccer or disability soccer.
So our topic of discussion today with Matt is disability soccer, why you should care. So Matt will go over a presentation with all of us. If you have any questions or like to ask us something, please use the chat form option in the webinar, and we can answer your questions whenever we can. So I think you're able now, Matt, to access your files.
Great. Okay. Let's go here. Share screen. Okay, we're good. We're able to see that screen, that graphic?
We're good to go.
Excellent. So thank you very much for everybody for joining. I'm going to go through 4 or 5 slides. So not a huge slide deck, but a ton of information in each of those slides. The first one here is probably, if we kind of start at the top, almost sort of a gold standard of what an accessible soccer program would look like. So the example here has sort of an all abilities entry level for the very youngest children, and what we describe here, even before Active Start. And a lot of people know about Active Start and Learn to Train when it comes to long-term athlete development, but there's actually 2 additional stages. One of those being first involvement, which is people's first experience in the program. For most soccer players, they come along with mom or dad and they get on the field and there's not really a second thought. But for athletes with a disability in those families, there are often other questions or concerns that are raised before they even get to the session and get to the field. So that first involvement is really important to provide them with more information about the program, how it's going to be managed, the experience or the qualifications of the coaches and the leaders. And that is really, really important. Because those parents will talk to other parents, and if they get a positive vibe and a positive experience from that first involvement, it can really set you up for a lot of success and spread that word. So from there, the first involvement into an Active Start program, if they're a younger player or an older player, into something like a Soccer for Life or a multi-sport program. And then with the older players in this program, typically in that youth environment, they age out at 18 years of age. For athletes with a disability, they can often go on to 21 years of age. So older age groups are certainly an option. And then even on into adulthood. Fergus Alora District Soccer Club to the west of Ontario has one of the few adult programs, and they have huge numbers, 50 or 60 adults with a disability each summer. They do a fantastic festival as well in the local fields in the center of town. But there aren't too many programs that are offering adult programming as well for adults with a disability, which is fine. Clubs and organizations will serve the need or the community demand, whether that's children, youth, or adults. And then at the top there, just like any other player pathway, you've got to think of this as as a soccer pathway as well, just like any other form of soccer that you're offering, and futsal as well. What are the potentials for some of those players to go to a next level? So within a club environment, that might be moving from recreational into a competitive environment, and working on how that's managed. Or it might be the opportunity, as you can see here in the graphic, Special Olympics does a fantastic job with their group of athletes to move through from a local chapter into regional, provincial, and then even national and international programs. So Special Olympics is a great example there of that pathway. and there may be children and youth in your programs that have an opportunity to represent at the higher level. And then on the other side there, the Canadian Para Soccer Team. So this is the only program that Canada Soccer supports and recognizes right now, really, is around their para team. So athletes that either have cerebral palsy, a stroke, or have had traumatic brain injury. And we have a great grassroots club example with Pickering Football Club, where a young player who was actually in the program here moved into being a junior coach of the program and was also identified by the Canadian Para Soccer Team head coach, Drew Ferguson, and actually got the opportunity to represent Canada at that level at 2 or 3 major tournaments so far. And he's still very active in that program. So who knows where the opportunities will take him. But this sort of gives you an example of what this might look like, best case scenario right now in a club environment. So now I'm just going to jump down to some of the resources. So when we're looking at places to find this information, where do we start? A lot of fear, a lot of concern about doing the right things, saying the right thing. And Soccerability Canada does offer a 3 and a 6 hour workshop to really delve into some of these things, particularly around language and appropriate ways to manage sessions on the field and what that can look like. But if you're not there yet, and as a club you're sort of wanting to look for more information and research before you get started, there are some key areas to look. So disability specific sport organizations. So there are national groups out there and provincial groups like Canadian Blind Sport Association, Canadian Deaf Sport Association, CP Sport Canada. So there are national and provincial levels that can really do a lot of different sports, but they will be specifically focused on one disability or maybe 2 disabilities. Then there are pan-disability sport organizations. So somebody like Special Olympics or the Canadian Paralympic Foundation cater to a range of different needs, but also a range of different sports as well. So Special Olympics looks after athletics, soccer, softball, etc., etc. It's a range of different sports under that organization. And then finally, they're the educational system. So school boards are a great source of resources for teachers that work in this area, that not only could provide some expertise to your club and potentially be a new coach within the system, but also have a network or a gateway into where these athletes, where these players might be within the school system. And being in the school board, they're very well networked with other organizations or other teachers in the system. And then the other one here, Coaches Association of Canada, they launched probably about 6 or 7 years ago an online course. It's about 45 minutes long. I think it's about $10 or $15, but gives you sort of a very high level introduction into disability sport. So that one covers a range of different sports, but really as a coach, what should the questions be that you're asking when you're working in that environment to ensure that you set the session up for the best of success, and that you're also protected as well when you're delivering a session. Online resources, there are 3 really great resources here. One of them is the Canadian Tire Jumpstart page, which has a Coaching Kids of All Abilities program. It's about 2 to 3 hours long. It has a very similar feel to the Respecting Sport course for anybody that's taken that, but has a ton of really great information, does a bit more of a deeper dive into accessible sport and inclusion. Then, as we just mentioned, the NCCP program, it's called Coaching Athletes with a Disability, and that's accessible through the locker that most coaches will have a profile for. And from time to time, they do issue free codes to access that Coaching Athletes with a Disability course at no charge. So definitely look out for that. The third one here, the CDPP portal. So this is the Canadian Disability Participation Project. This is kind of a cool group of academics from across Canada that converge and connect on a regular basis on 3 key areas. One of those is around the workplace and employment. One of them is around sort of accessibility in everyday life. And then one of those pillars, the third, is around sport and recreation participation. So often they're looking for partners to inform them of their research and their studies. They're actually just about to get into one right now around blind sport and what that looks and feels like and how that's developing or not developing. So that's kind of a current academic research, but a ton of information on their website relating to accessible sport inclusion. So some great resources there. And then finally at the bottom there, the soccerability.ca website. So we have a website we've actually just rebranded and brought it across to a new platform. So it's kind of bare bones right now, but over the course of the next month, that's going to be populated with all of the great content that we had in the previous website, which included a lot of blogs, links to other resources, and also links to club programs out there across the province and across the country. So we talked just a few minutes ago about the Special Olympics pathway, and this is where we really want to sort of frame for clubs and club leaders how this is all structured and really where the gaps are. So at the very bottom there, we've got that entry level program, and clubs call it different things. At Oakville Soccer Club, it's called Breaking Barriers. At Pickering Football Club and a number of other clubs, it's the All Abilities program. So really, there's no rhyme or reason as to what a club or academy would want to call their program. It's branded how you like it, but really make sure that that message is carried across so that when people come to your website, it's obvious to them where they can find that accessible program. Don't lose it within all of the other competitive and recreational and grassroots programs that you might have running. Make sure it's pretty accessible for a parent to find where the program's listed. So we describe these as pan-disability soccer programs. You're not going to start a program specifically for deaf or hearing impaired children or youth because you might have a really, really niche audience and it might only be one or two players. So pan-disability, offering it for a range of different needs, is the best way to set your program up for success, that you'll have a range of different children come to the program, children, youth or adults, and then you'll work with that group of players that might be in smaller groups, whether it's based on age or gender, or even if it is on disability. But you'll organize that based on what's most appropriate for the athlete at that stage. Then there are also come and try events. So these could be offered by a community group, school board, also with school programs. So that these are a way for somebody to come along and just try, get an experience and see whether they like a program. The really important thing for these, and I've been involved in many of them, is not to get somebody excited about the sport and the opportunity for them to play soccer and then not have a next step. Where are these participants going to be able to go to? Because that's really frustrating. You go in there, you'll deliver a session for an hour or so, you'll get somebody really, really excited about soccer, but not have somewhere nearby for them that they'd be able to go to participate. So from the grassroots program and that sort of first experience, they're going to then move into potentially a pathway specific to them. So as we mentioned earlier, on the right there, Special Olympics, a great opportunity for players to move up through that pathway. It's very well resourced, and there's tons of great experience, tons of great social media out there when it comes to Special Olympics. The next one, reading in from the right to the left, is the Canadian Deaf Sport Association. So historically, they had a male 11-a-side team, which hasn't really grown. It's been challenging in that area, more from the organization sort of direction, very hockey focused and volleyball focused. And what they've been encouraged to do most recently is look at futsal. Futsal, you can get that kind of critical mass of athletes coming together and not have to look for 11 players plus substitutes. At least with futsal, you're looking for 5 starters and then some substitutes. So you can get a critical mass, and that's not unusual for parasport. And then again, there are provincial level deaf sport associations out there as well. So that could be a first point of contact to get some guidance and insight from them. If you do have an athlete with a hearing impairment come into the program, again, reach out to us at Soccerability Canada and we can help out. Power chair football is kind of cool, kind of unique in that it's one of the few, if the only version of soccer that has a mechanic on the team. So you'll need somebody that's able to fix a power chair, change out a battery, change a wheel, maybe do some electrical work on a chair, as well as having your coaching staff with them as well. So power chair football historically was based out of BC. A lot of activity there, sort of pre-pandemic, to about a decade ago. Slowly that started to grow out now. So a lot of interest in Quebec, which is where the president and the vice president are actually based. 3 or 4 teams have popped up in Nova Scotia in the last 2 years. And Alberta as well also has a program and team in Calgary and one in Edmonton. Something that's not really taken off here in Ontario as of yet. But a very cool version of the game, 4v4 format, played on a court a little bit bigger than a basketball size court, and with a size 9 soccer ball. So an enormous soccer ball. And the power chairs that they use, so this isn't a wheelchair, this would be a motorized power chair, has a bumper at the front that's used to project the ball and propel the ball and move it forward. They don't use it like bumper cars. That would be a foul, just like any sort of other physical contact in soccer. So that's power chair football. But then we get into blind football or blind soccer. So Soccerability Canada's sort of really taking the lead on this for right now. Right now at the grassroots level, we have a program at Pickering Football Club with Toronto High Park FC, with Ottawa City Soccer Club, and with the London Whitecaps. So those 4 programs run once a week, have anywhere between 4 athletes and 7 or 8 athletes, and have been competing at provincial championships every 2 years. So the next provincial championships will be in 2025 in Niagara Falls. And each of those 4 teams will compete. They'll bring their squad along and they'll play on a field. So we play 5v5, sort of very similar to futsal rules, but on a turf field. And there are rebound boards, which are about 1 meter high along the long sides of the field. And that helps keep the ball in. It also helps with the sound of the ball, that it will rattle, and it makes a different noise when it gets nearest to the board. So the players can hear it and sort of use that echolocation to know where they are on the field. So Soccerability Canada is really helping to grow that. It was the only sport at the 2015 Para-Pan Am Games in Toronto that didn't have a Canadian representation. So we are keen to fix that legacy and move that forward. And we're actually in the process right now of seeing if we can host a Grand Prix in May 2025 that would see international teams, probably from Brazil, Argentina, the US, and maybe even Europe, come in and compete on the women's side. So what I'll say with regard to the blind soccer and the para soccer is that at the global level, the International Paralympic Committee wants to see more gender equity. Historically, these versions of the game have really evolved on the male side. Blind soccer has been around probably 50 or 60 years. Para soccer, I believe in the last 20 or 30 years. The women's game really has only just started to kick into gear in the last 2 or 3 years. So the International Paralympic Committee is really driving more participation in these areas. So blind soccer is something we're really focused on, male and female teams. A lot of the practices right now are co-ed, but ideally when you get to international level, those would be gender specific. And then with Canada Soccer and the para soccer program, Drew Ferguson and his team are trying to offer and open up opportunities for female players to come to some of their tryout events that they run during the year. So that para soccer team has a pool of probably about 50 or 60 players that Canada Soccer is aware of across the country. And then those players are invited in from time to time when the competition is appropriate to select players to compete. And they just finished a tournament last month in Spain. at the international level. So they had a world championships for para soccer. All of those other sports have a world championships, including blind soccer. And then at the Paralympic level with the Paralympics, blind soccer currently is the only format that's there. But we're hoping that we can get para soccer back in to the Paralympics. And also power chair football is putting on a real big push to be considered as a Paralympic sport. So we're working on filling those gaps in those pathways, really, and that really starts with a groundswell of activation at the community level, grassroots clubs, academies, soccer associations, and maybe even multi-sport groups. So this map is not the prettiest. It's a lot of color going on right now. We're moving this to a Google map, which will be interactive so that families can zoom in on a province, a community, and find a local program near to them. But really, this just gives you a snapshot. And actually, this is a little bit outdated. We've got 3 or 4 programs happening in Nova Scotia now. So activity is growing. And the beauty of this is it really shows those grassroots leaders that are making things happen that there's connection here. They're not doing this in isolation. Not only are there other clubs, so maybe that opens up to competition, but there's also a real sense of community when it comes to para sport. So if one club's got a great program or they're doing something a little different that seems to be working, they're more than happy to share it with other clubs and help grow programs, whether it's down the road or whether it's on the other side of the country. And one of the things that Soccerability Canada does is a quarterly forum where we open up the doors for any of these clubs to jump onto a chat. We just chat for an hour, share ideas, funding opportunities, competitions, whatever it might be, to help sort of grow the sport and again get that sense of community and camaraderie. One of the wonderful things that a couple of the clubs did in the Durham region area was harmonize coordinate their actual practices. So one would practice every Saturday morning for an hour or 2 hours, and a club just down the road would practice on a Sunday afternoon. Because a lot of this participation is at the recreational level, that means a kid can come and register at Club A on a Saturday, but if they really love their soccer, go and register with Club B for the Sunday session. So there's an opportunity there for them to get lots and lots of soccer if they really, really enjoy it. So there's a lot of collaboration out there. There are clubs out there that are doing multiple programs, so they might do one that is pan-disability, and they might also see a demand to do one that is maybe catering for players that are on the autism spectrum. That's certainly not even a ripple, I'd say a growing tidal wave that we're starting to see is a number of players that are coming into the environment that are on the autism spectrum. And it's really important that coaches know how to work with those players, to ask the right questions of the parents to make sure that they're set up for success. So it might be that if you do see a demand in your community for a particular need, that's totally fine to create that breakout session for them, and chances are the players will get more benefit from it, and the coaches will be able to really lock in on a specific need and really get to understand it. One of the things that Ontario Soccer did this summer in partnership with Soccerability Canada and Circle K was to offer 3 festivals. So similar to the festivals that a lot of clubs would run during the summer, the Circle K Accessible Festival enabled children from different clubs to come and meet and get that real sense of competition. A lot of accessible programs are very much insular and kind of club focused and not too much outreach or connection, but having children and their families get a sense of this is what soccer's about, and this is the next opportunities to meet other teams, see other uniforms, go to different fields is really, really cool, and really valuable in general as a life experience. So, the question would be, why would we not extend that opportunity and ensure that our accessible program gets the chance to experience that as well? Okay, so almost at the end of the slide. So International Day of Persons with Disabilities is what we're celebrating today. global day of recognition from the United Nations with a different theme each year, but really an opportunity to share great experiences that are happening out there. There's a ton of stuff on social media using the hashtag IDPD 2024, or in full, International Day of Persons with Disabilities 2024, but an opportunity not just people within the sports sector, but across government, community, education, industry, to share what they're doing when it comes to wider access and inclusion of people with a disability. And there are some great opportunities to learn from within our country, within our province, within our community, and even globally. As I said before, there's a great sense of camaraderie and connection. And if we can move that dial forward on greater inclusion and accessibility, then the world just becomes a better place. So I'd certainly encourage you to look up that hashtag, see what's out there and what people are sharing. And from our perspective at Soccerability Canada, we're always looking to see what we can learn, beg, borrow, or steal from other organizations or people that we might be able to collaborate with that we hadn't thought about to this point. And just above that is our Canadian version, which is the National Accessibility Week, which happens the last week of May every year. So this year it's May 26th to June the 1st. Last year, we did this for the first time. We connected with the Canadian Premier League and York United, and we sent a group of our blind soccer players from Pickering Football Club and North Mississauga Soccer Club down to a York United game. They got to experience the atmosphere and the vibe of the game day. At halftime, they went down onto the field and actually did a bit of a demonstration of blind soccer. We did some dribbling, some passing, and then getting to shoot on a full-size 11v11 goal was kind of cool in front of the fans in the stands. That was 2023. In 2024, we expanded that with more involvement from the CPL, which was fantastic. And we grew that to, again, an experience with York United, but we connected them with Vaughan Soccer Club this time, with Forge FC in Hamilton, and we connected them with Saltfleet Soccer Club down there, and also with the Halifax Wanderers, and connected them with Suburban FC in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Simple experiences, simple opportunity for a pro league club to get connected with a grassroots program. And we know a lot of times these clubs are connected, but really haven't taken that opportunity to highlight the accessible program. It's hugely beneficial for the club to grow some of their numbers. The CPL, it's a great way to kind of highlight that give back piece, but also putting those announcements over the PA system during the game and putting the pieces out on social media further amplify the message we've got here that, soccer's for everybody. And this is a great way to highlight that and give those kids and those coaches a cool experience on the field at halftime. So we'll be looking to grow that in 2025. Look out for wider collaboration between Soccerability Canada and the Canadian Premier League. And we're really excited about where this can go and what this can look like moving forward at a national level and a national message. So, as I mentioned before, we've got our website, but we're open to conversation, connection, whether it's wanting to start a program at a club or a community, or just guidance on the accommodation that might be needed for a certain player or a family or a certain need. If we don't have the answer, we know where to find the answer. And if we can't even do that, then we'll work through a solution with you as a club, with the leaders at your organization, and with that family. And I got to highlight that there's not always a one-size-fits-all, and it might not be an overnight solution. An example I can give you is a club to the east of the province that had a young male player, 11 years of age, who was a wheelchair user, who wanted to play soccer. His personal support worker got in touch with the local club and wanted to get involved. And the club reached out to us in a panic saying, we don't know what we would do or how this would look. So we started a conversation and started to map out that the personal support worker would wear the same jersey as the as the player in the wheelchair so that they were easily identifiable. We sort of created the concept of a force field around the wheelchair so that other kids that were playing against this boy wouldn't run into the wheelchair and put themselves at harm. There's a real concern there around liability and risk management. And that the coach of the team the club had already identified would be like a positive influence, somebody who was open-minded and ready to take on this new learning, this new experience with a player, versus a coach that might be, a win at all costs, benching players that aren't strong enough kind of mindset. So we thought that was a good solution, but we heard back through the club from the parents that they still didn't feel this was inclusive enough, and that concept of the force field was still a barrier, kind of separated their son from participating with the rest of the team. So we removed the barrier, but we put some education pieces in place so that before the game, the referee, and because this was a recreational league, it was the same referee each game. So the club scheduled the same referee to look after that game, so he would know, or she would know, how the match plays out, what some of the changes might need to be made along the way. The coach, as I mentioned, was the right coach to work with this player. And then before each game, both sets of players and the other coach were educated on this player being on the field and safety around tackling and kicking the ball near to the wheelchair. And if there are any questions from the parents, it would be on each of the coaches to go over and speak to their parents and explain this. And if any parent had a doubt, they were more than welcome to remove their child from the field for that game, which I can say didn't happen. The season kicked off. Apparently the first game was played and the ball bounced up, hit this young player in his wheelchair in the head, and there was a deathly silence. There was a panic as to what was going to happen next. And then they just heard a laughter from this kid, like belly laugh. He was in the game. He was engaged and he got to experience soccer firsthand. And that really set off the tone for the rest of the season. There wasn't a problem. Things went great. That kid got to experience soccer just like everybody else on the field. I can only imagine how strong the PSW, personal support worker, needed to be moving that wheelchair up and down the grass field all season, but they made it happen. And that's what inclusion, accessibility, and removing barriers is all about. So that wasn't a one-off conversation. That wasn't here's an email with the bullet points of what you need to do. It was more involved than that. And that's the nuance of accessible soccer. But I think inherently as coaches, we seek out challenges. We're problem solvers. And this is just a fascinating way that as a coach is a really fascinating, cool way to get involved and, understand some of the challenges that might exist. A lot of times we relate this to long-term athlete development, which is really about player-centered solutions, player-centered focus. It's not one size fits all for your team. And when it comes to accessible soccer, disability soccer, this is it to a next level. You might have a wider age range of players. You're going to have a wider range of needs, but you adapt, you adjust, you challenge yourself to work out what that solution is going to be to make sure that child, youth, adult gets the best possible experience when they're on the field participating. So we'd strongly encourage you to reach out, follow us on social media. We share as many bits of best practice as we can on our platforms. We're going to amplify what the great things that people are doing here in Ontario, in Canada, and globally as well, so that we can share and amplify the sport. And by all means, if you've got questions, reach out to us at that email address, and we'll be very happy to respond, whether you're a coach, a club leader, or if you're a parent wanting to get your kid involved. We had 2 emails just this week for people that wanted to find out where the local club playing opportunity was for their child. So please reach out, because we want to grow these numbers and we want to continue that groundswell. So finally, that's a thank you from me and from the board at Soccerability Canada. We do have a guy in the West, and I say literally the West, in Calgary, Alberta, John Clubb, who's there to support the Western provinces. And myself, Matt Greenwood, I'm able to provide support here for Ontario and and out to the east. So we love to connect, share best practice across club, provincial, national level programs. I really thank you for your time and for your listening. Thanks.
Matt, thank you very much for the presentation. It was really good. What do you think some of the barriers are from having more clubs running these kind of programs?
That's a great question. I think a lot of time we sort of identified as fear. It's a fear of saying the wrong thing, a fear of maybe hurting or damaging a player if they haven't got a field set up properly, or they don't quite know what they should be doing. But if anything, that's the worst stance to take. If somebody comes to your club looking to participate in a program, the worst thing you can say is, no, sorry, we don't offer anything. It really should be, we don't have anything right now, but let's look into it. We'll get some more answers and some guidance, and then we'll help start something. So I think that the biggest barrier a lot of time is that fear piece. If I can give you an example, Cambridge Soccer Club was a great example 6 or 7 years ago. Thought they wanted to do something. We jumped on a call with them with their board, literally the board having a meeting. We dialed into the call and really provided them with some guidance. Within 2 months, they'd started a program, and it's been going really well ever since. So I think having that conversation with club, academy, association leadership on what some of those risks might be, and kind of giving them some peace of mind is the best sort of first step. One of the things that we often encourage organizations to do is make your registration just like any other registration that you'd have for any other program at the club. Don't put those barriers up right at the start. So if it's, for example, an all abilities program, if that's the name of the program, when somebody registers for that, they're already identifying that this is what's right for their kid. In the back end, once you've got that registration list of 5, 10, 20 kids, then somebody can go and reach out to those parents and follow up with them on more questions, more guidance on what a player might need, and what's going to set the child up for success. So ask those questions in the back end once they've registered, not at the front end where it can be intimidating and maybe deter a parent from being involved. Because keep in mind, they'll have had potentially other experiences with other sports that might not have gone so well, or have shown those barriers. So we want to try and be as open doors as we can, and then grow from there.
And is there any special training that you recommend coaches who are going to deliver this program should have?
That's a great question, Valerio. So we would recommend at the very basic level an active start or fundamentals course. A lot of what they're going to want to deliver on the course, on the field, is really going to look like an active start or a fundamentals session. Lots of physical literacy, touches on the ball, lots of fun and games. And then educate themselves around that when it comes to maybe some of the disability groups that they might see coming to their program. There is actually an online course that's going to be launched hopefully within the next month from Canada Soccer, and Soccerability Canada has been able to partner with them on that, which talks at a higher level around some of those adaptations that would be made on the field. It's about a 45-minute online course. It's going to be free. And that will really get a national reach into clubs that maybe don't have the time to host a workshop or attend something. At least they can get onto that and get some ideas of what that on-field piece would look like. But definitely get that basic soccer coaching course to understand what a field setup would look like for a game of sharks and minnows or whatever it might be.
And what do you recommend as a player to coach ratio with these kinds of programs?
In an ideal world, probably one-to-one would be wonderful. There are a few clubs that can do that, and if they do, they're usually looking at volunteers, which might be junior players within the club that are great role models. Not only does that give them some volunteer hours and some experience, but it also gives them a really good perspective on what the whole of the club is about, not just their team that they compete for, and that there's recreational soccer, but here's a really cool part of the club that they might not have known existed. But really adjust that based on the needs of your group. If you've got, so for example, the program at Pickering with the older age group athletes, they can have 2 coaches to 10 or 12 players, because they're that little bit more comfortable, the players are that little bit more experienced, and don't need quite so much attention. But at the very youngest ages, one-on-one would be ideal. And ideally, if there's an opportunity to separate the parent from the player, so when the player steps onto the field, they're being partnered with a junior coach, then mom and dad not only get to sit on the side and enjoy watching their kid play, but they also get to do a whole bunch of networking and find out what other programs children are being signed up for, whether it's swimming or gymnastics or a school program or some funding that's out there. That social networking piece for the parents on the side is really, really priceless.
And it also gives the player a little bit of independence away from the parents in that environment as well, right?
Definitely. I mean, they potentially can see their parents on the side. And again, it's just like any other program you see, right? U3, U4, Timbit soccer. It's that, big step onto the field. Mum and dad are on the side on the blanket. And I get to be a real soccer player out here on my own with my coach. So again, kind of very similar to what we see in other forms of the game.
Perfect. So if anybody wants to have any other questions or wants to reach out about how their club or how you as a coach can get involved in this, please reach out to Matt. And hopefully we get more clubs and academies offering these kinds of programs, so that every child has an opportunity to play the beautiful game.
That's the plan. The more people we got participating, the more we can build competitions, build festivals, build opportunities for players to move forward, and particularly with a little matter of a FIFA World Cup on our soil in 2026. No better time now than to start and put on the best show possible to show how much we love this sport at every level, and that this sport really is for everybody.
Perfect. Matt, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and good luck.
Excellent. Thanks, Valerio. Thanks to the NSCAC for hosting me. Appreciate it.
Perfect. And if you haven't registered for our next Behind the Bench, it's Thursday at 2:00. Just go to our website and register. And if you're not a member yet and you'd like access to all of our previous webinars and all our coaching education, please visit our website and register at nscac.ca. Thank you very much, Matt. It was a pleasure, and we'll talk to you soon.